There we go. Just so you know, I've started recording. I'll do
Okay.
announcements and things like that later tomorrow. But yeah, so how would you like me to introduce you? Dr. Alicia Henley?
Sure. Why
Yeah.
not use it?
Now, I'm going to call this collateral damage. I'm doing a
Okay.
series. I'm probably going to end up being a series of women who have been affected and are now considered collateral damage around one person. So one
I
person's
think that's
right to a
great.
ball wax has affected probably close to 50 women and a number of girls, and so how many women need is acceptable collateral damage for one man's ideas? That's the question that's the question that I want to pose and ask, because it's just anyway. So thank you for joining me for this.
Oh,
I'm
no problem.
so grateful. You've had such a shit time. Um, um, I can't even imagine how. There's a lot of wounds being sort of people licking wounds at the moment, I think.
Licking wounds. Yep.
I'll introduce you. I can edit all of this,
Okay.
but one thing that I'm observing with this JY case that's coming up, not that's currently happening, is I don't know about you, but I go between waves of disbelief, anger, and finding it fucking hilarious.
Yes.
It is a
Exactly.
weird
I
emotional
can't
roller
believe it's happening,
coaster.
actually.
It's kind
So,
of, yeah. So tell
yeah.
me a bit about you first.
Okay.
So tell us how you fell into this and why I'm talking to you.
So should I just start
So
about
maybe
how
start
far
from the
back do you want me
beginning.
to go?
Well, you and I are both feminists, both pretty
Mm-hmm.
proud feminists, and have been for some
Mm-hmm.
time, right? And I think that at some point we got involved in online discussions around feminism.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start that? When did you first start talking about feminism online?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, yes, I think just to give a tiny bit of background, I've always been a feminist, raised as a kid, a little tiny kid, and then a little bigger kid, first in the 70s and early 80s. And my mom always worked. She was a librarian. And not sure if she call herself a feminist or not. I haven't really asked, but she certainly lived a lot of what I believe feminism should be.
Yeah.
Two quick examples as a kid. I'm not going to dwell on childhood. I remember her and she and my dad are still together, over 50 years. They hold hands for God's sake. But she told me, one of my earliest messages from her was, she said, Alicia, she said two things. One, someday if, she knew I liked boys, you marry a man, and if any way he is harmful to you in any way, or you need to divorce, she said, always remember you don't want to be dependent on a man.
Yeah.
Always remember that you need to have some way, whether you, and she had a great marriage. It wasn't that. She just wanted to make it clear.
Yeah.
I also remember I do have two older brothers, 5 years older. One's quite a bit, well, both are bigger than me. I'm kind of a scrawny person, but one is quite a bit bigger. And this might not surprise anyone, but I was like a total blowhard as a kid. And
what does blowhard mean?
Oh, it means like I was kind of like sometimes a bit too in your face with opinions, or I was a bratty little sister.
You're a high octane individual.
Yeah, with my brothers.
Yeah.
And I'd stand in front of the TV and not let him change channel. And so he once went and he like picked me up and he threw me. I didn't get hurt, other than, at the time. But my mother sat him down and she said, I don't care how annoying Alicia may be to you. I don't care if she stands in front, like, I don't care what she does. I will have a consequence for her. You are never to touch a woman. You are never to touch a girl. It's just, and it wasn't about being a nice man. It was like, basically there's a difference in physical, and just know. She said, I will never take your side if you ever lay a hand on any girl or woman. And I've said the same thing to my eldest, and I will to my little ones. But anyway, so I kind of grew up in that era. And in university, I was part of the women's, not club. There was a women's center, so I worked and volunteered. So it was always kind of part of my being, but also part of my being was, and definitely still is, a belief in human rights. Yeah. So I was always, if there was kind of the underdog, is that a term in Australia? Yeah. Okay.
I was,
yes, I was probably fighting for the underdog. And then when I joined more social media, and that probably got me into psychology. But then when I joined social media, it was for two reasons. One, because I've written some, not related to psychology, some novels. So it was to publicize that, and also to find connections with other parents of autistic kids, because my third child has autism. And so that was really not as a woe is me parenting. It was more, advocating and what's available, what do I listen to a lot of autistic adults. And that kind of then led me somehow, I think maybe because some of the autistic young people were also trans, into believing I was supporting kind of all human rights, but sometimes that's hard if it's at the expense of other people, into more intersectional feminism.
I call it feels true feminism.
That's a better term.
It feels true. It's self-evident.
Very true.
It's inclusive.
And
it's good.
It's been a number of years now since I was practicing as a psychologist. But even back several years ago, we had on our doors, I believe it was a triangle, different colors, and it said, first of all, it said GLB, I think. And then GLBT, and never went further. And so in my head and in discussions and staff, meetings, the T was connected completely. So in my head...
It seems like a natural progression, right?
Yes. So I always, it just seemed natural to me to support anyone who is gay or lesbian or bisexual or straight. Like, it was just that intuitively made sense. Like, there was, of course. So then when I saw the T, or not saw, but like, I didn't really totally understand, but this is, if I support, which of course I do, especially as a woman, the rights of lesbians, and if I support the rights of gay men, or if I, then obviously in my head, but without really critically evaluating, well, what does T mean? And is it appropriate to be connected because it's not a sexual orientation? That's where I was coming from. So I felt very firmly, I've always called myself a feminist. That's not new. But I felt, okay, this is part of my beliefs, and and to be fair, because some people have said, which I understand, in comments from the article I wrote, why didn't you think of this before? Why did you just, in terms of critically taking a step back, in terms of the transgender umbrella? And before I stopped practicing, it was even then, and this is like 6 years ago, it was we had some educational presentations that didn't really explain, but reinforced even back then that trans women are women, and they because we were dealing with, I was working at ironically, because one of our in quotes pals is from this university, but I was working at University of Waterloo.
Yeah,
the Psychologist is from there.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't you know who I am? I don't know who they are.
Well, and did the same, within the same department, ironically, small world, that my father was the dean of philosophy.
Wow.
But he was retired by then. But anyway, so it's a big university. It's not a, I don't know, tiny place that doesn't know anything. We were giving these presentations, and this is, certain people had more training, but because we were dealing primarily with older youth, this is where you refer, and it never was, wait a minute, how do we evaluate, how are you, or the people that are going to, how are they going to tease out what's going on? Why the rush to refer to a clinic, So that was already in my training. So it wasn't just me being totally ignorant and just saying, kumbaya. It was that this had already, back then.
So had it already become gospel?
Exactly. It was already, even though, and I recall,
that's interesting.
I only, and I'm sure it'd be very different today, had a couple students come and share that they were experiencing what I believe was probably gender dysphoria, but other, I couldn't evaluate that, but I could evaluate or assess other issues. And I clearly remember one young person who believed they were female, presented, hadn't done anything to try to transition, and their family had believed this person was gay, and already the father had said, "I will kill you if you say you're gay." So this person, I can't imagine. And then this person was actually felt that they were experiencing something their father would be even more horrified by. And so that always, I referred them to someone else. I didn't feel qualified, but that always stuck with me. Again, underdog, and that was horrific. I mean, the poor student, it was that, but that stuck in my head. And I think when you have a few really salient examples of any situation, so I didn't have the experience of meeting hundreds of clients who were expressing that they were trans. I had a handful, because at that time it was considered extremely rare. And so that stood out in my head. And I still think that is horrific, what this person was going through. Yeah. But that is, now I can separate that from, well, that doesn't mean automatically that this is true, So I know that's I totally went away from your question.
Fine. No, that's fine. But as a parent of an autistic child, I know I'm on the spectrum as well, so I can relate. Of that feeling of disconnect and not fitting in.
Exactly.
and how as a population we're more vulnerable to these sorts of contagion. These kinds of are vulnerable to cults and salespeople, and my ex-husband used to say, "I'll buy anything if they're nice to me." So I'm such an easy mark for but I've had to build that wall. Like, that's actually something that I've had to build up. But as a kid, I still contend to be very gullible when it comes to well, if there's a blind spot, I will defer to the authority. Right. So that's one of those things where if I don't know something, I will assume that I don't know. And I will assume that other people know better than me, right? And I will believe them. And because I had no real skin in the game when it comes to the sort of LGBT, I considered myself an ally and would fight the fight, but it wasn't necessarily my fight. So I wasn't involved in the organising or anything like that. So it was just sort of, I was on the periphery of a movement, but I considered myself a feminist, and I was involved in student politics. But I think it's one of those things where unless you're in it and exposed to it, you're not necessarily aware of the intricacies of it.
Exactly.
And what it actually means. And as much as I don't want to quote our favourite pariah, Mr. Louis C.K., because, but his "of course but maybe" bit is one of my favourite things. That thing where he says, "Of course every trans people should have rights, but maybe there's more." And then obviously I like that bit because it's like, well, of course the knee jerk is, of course this stuff is sensible. And I think that I can't say "of course but maybe" anymore because he's not allowed. I'm not allowed to actually like Louis C.K. either now. Apparently, I've been told I'm not allowed to. Anyway, that's a side point. But I'm saying I think it really comes down to your experience mirrors mine, which is that you just didn't really think about it.
Exactly.
And even smart people get caught up in it. And I think even smart people get caught up in it because they take it at the surface level. And I know for me, it is because it's a blind spot. I assume that those that are in it are experts, and I assume that those that are speaking. And I think this is the problem that we're seeing at Pride at the moment, is that the people that are spokespeople, like mermaids in the UK, is deeply troubling. But they've got the ear of everybody. And I think everyone's assuming that the bad actors are experts when it's deeply concerning. I know we've gone off, but
a good friend of mine in Toronto, she and her wife and their two little girls for years have been going to Pride. It's a big event in Toronto. The Prime Minister is there, I believe, and they the last year or two they have not gone, and they say that they don't feel they're part of a lesbian community and do not feel, and many people in the community are saying the same thing. They're afraid, and they're also afraid that a number of young women or young girls who are questioning their identity and wondering, what's going on, that who are likely lesbians are now being pushed by this very strong ideology away from who they truly are. And
that if they don't want penis, that there's something wrong with them.
Exactly.
That they're a bigot and that they're they're a suppressive person and they're cast out of the movement. It's very, very worrying. And again, I just want to qualify this for those that are listening. We're both two white heterosexuals talking about LGBT movement as allies, and I want to get more trans and lesbian and gay voices to actually speak about this. But this is just we're just talking about stuff we've observed from our friends. And from the things that they're, and also just from what they're saying and giving and trying to be good allies and just really bring people's attention to what's happening to lesbians. If you care about nothing else, you need to listen to the L in this thing about
Exactly.
if you know, like, what is, it's an abomination what's happening to lesbians in Pride. Anyway, I just I wanted to qualify it because I don't want to be perceived to be speaking on behalf of the L.
No, I'm glad. I'm really glad that you did, because I don't want to
we've
come
observed
off
it.
that I know everything. That is not my lived experience at all, and so.
Well, L is for listening as well.
I'm really glad you said that.
And we've been doing, and Alicia and I are probably very similar timelines actually, where I've been researching this. I could do a PhD on this shit. I've spent so much time.
We should do a joint PhD.
Yeah, we could write. I actually would love to write a book of essays about this phenomenon, and with contributed stories from women.
That's a great idea.
We should do something like that.
I think that's a great idea.
And get those stories out. But what was I going to say? I can't remember.
We said we had a similar similar timeline. Yeah.
And this isn't just I just discovered this. This is, I've spent 2 years really trying to get this right before even speaking. I've been listening and reading and watching. And I've been participating where I think it's appropriate. You are so much better than me. I'm a bit more careful.
Almost vomiting on Twitter with my.
I've done that over other things and learned the hard way not to.
I have as well over other things too. But there was this one. There was this one horrific thread, and many people listening remember it well. And at first, and it was mostly women, wondered, these are gender critical feminists, and wondered, has she been hit on the head? Is this for real? Is this really you, Alicia? But then they welcomed me. And I had been, like, my behavior was ridiculous. Quite frankly, unlike you who was listening, I was just talking.
It's an incredible group of women.
And I thought, wow, the fact that so many women and some men were so gracious to me and trusted that my views were shifting, and then that Megan Murphy trusted me enough to let me write an article.
She's a good one.
It was humbling, really. Pardon?
Yeah. She's a really good one. I have nothing, and her and Graham have just been through the ringer, and there's part of me that it's good to see, and that's why I think for those that have been watching me go nuts and think that I've been radicalized and the Russians have taken over my account in the last week and I've gone alt-right and all of those sorts of things. It's not. What you're witnessing is a massive release, I think, of silencing and bullying and pain and grief, and seeing this come out, and Ricky Gervais just blew it out of the fucking water.
I was so glad.
And Titanium McGraw. I'm so proud of him because I'm such a huge Ricky Gervais fan. And I replied to him actually, and I said, look, because I actually tagged him in it as well, and I said, I knew you'd be our guy if you were aware of this. Because he's that, I've followed him for years, and I just go, I know you. As a fan, I know this is up your alley. So, and I know that he came in, I think he, like most people, he came into this thing and it was like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? And I think it just, and I think that seeing all of the jokes and the pylon and all the Eric Cartman gifts that but I think for context, for those the sort of the casual observers that are just getting around this mind fuck, and I acknowledge it's a massive mind fuck for everybody, that this is a massive release of, after years of relentless bullying, fallen soldiers And we've won the battle, but the war's not over. So I just wanted to give people some context that if we're taking the piss out of something, it's because
Yes.
It's actually just a coping strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why Megan's mad, because I think that on some, I think she has some different, I'm not speaking for her, but just what I've seen, she is off Twitter. She wasn't there to see all
Yeah.
of this fun fallout, and she didn't get the credit. Ricky Gervais, I can see it from her point of view. Her and people have lost careers, and it became a punchline. But I think that
Yeah.
ultimately, I think it's a good thing. I think
Yeah,
a lot of people.
Both my husband is a journalist. I'm not going to name him. He wouldn't like that.
Oh no.
He works for a regional paper, but he also regularly writes for one of the national papers. And I had said, why is no one covering this? Why is no one covering this?
I can understand.
And it wasn't on the radar. Like, it really wasn't. He thought this was almost like, well, this is unfortunate. It's not great. Not to put my husband down, but he and his colleagues, and again, the Toronto Star is a major, that's where he contributes. And there wasn't much awareness. And I was almost hitting my head against the wall, because it's like, I know.
If only a man could say it. Because I can see why. Can I be honest? I'm pissed on behalf of Megan and the fact that we have. She I don't. This is the thing that men do, not to have a go at your man.
Oh no, it's okay.
Why didn't you say something? I fucking did. Why are you yelling?
Exactly.
I've said it 12 times already.
His response, which was not, he is not a chauvinist, but he said, how does this affect you, Alicia? How does this affect you? Why are you so, and I said, because I'm a woman, and because we're also talking about children, and I'm a mother. But even if I wasn't a mother, I care for children. But it's because I am a woman.
You have a kid with autism who is extremely vulnerable. Yeah.
It's the same as, and I just, and it was just very frustrating, because I'm not trying to put him down.
No, we can laugh. I'm sure it's fine. Husbands of feminists are generally pretty thick-skinned people.
But yeah. But now it's broken through, not only in Canada, finally, but with Ricky Gervais, and now other publications internationally, the U.S., and it's like, to me, it's going to go one of two ways. Yeah. It will either be, and I think she had no idea that how much she'd have on her shoulders, I don't know if she'd call it a judge, but it'll either force there to be some sort of dialogue, like on a major scale, about rights of one group trumping another, or it's going to, at least in terms of Canada, create a very scary precedent. Very, very scary. So I am this feeling of not knowing which way this is going to go, and the fury I often feel that JY seems to find this hilarious.
And the thing is, what concerns me is the plausibility that this could even go in their favour.
Exactly.
That it's even being entertained.
And that it's already wrecked some women's lives.
Yeah, and the fact that they need to go to court and explain why they said no to a penis, when that's actually just something that, when you talk about a human right, that's a fundamental right, is to not touch someone else's body. I don't give a shit about whether they've got a business or not, than what they're offering. It's a personal agency. I don't understand how this is not thrown out. And if I was, can I be honest with you, if I was that judge, I would be having a and I'd be having some phone calls about how embarrassing this is.
Yeah. No,
Because it's actually, it makes a
all my
mockery of
kids,
the tribunal.
and my youngest is now 9, but always about bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
And I've said, so for example, if grandma wants a hug and you don't want to give it, you don't have to give it.
Yeah.
It's your body. You can say no, thank you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And tough luck for grandma. Like, I mean, not that they don't love their grandparents, but I really emphasize that.
Does that make them grandphobic?
Pardon?
Does that make them grandphobic?
No, grandmaphobic. But
sorry, I couldn't resist.
I recall when my daughter was 3. This was unbelievable. She was 3, and she was very cute. And we were at a pharmacy, and the pharmacist, who was a woman, this was so bizarre, she ran out from behind where she was and hugged my daughter. I said, I couldn't help it. You're so pretty. And I was just in shock. I regret now that I didn't, it was so shocking. But my daughter still remembers that. Yeah. She's like, Mom, I remember not liking that. I didn't want her to touch me. Yeah. And it's like, that's a basic thing that hopefully we now know to teach our children. So to be told, or it just, well, you and I are on the same page. I mean, it's like, how dare you, JY, have the audacity to insist that women, you disgusting human being. And if you're listening, JY, you're a disgusting human being. So, didn't misgender.
I hope they're not listening.
Well, that was just me. That wasn't you. You can delete that if you want.
You are most welcome to come on. I'm looking straight down the barrel of the camera right now. You are most welcome to come on and talk to me. Oh. I don't bite. I swear. I really do want to. I do want to understand because I don't. It's inexplicable. There comes a point where it's Cosby level number count, where there's just so many that it's ridiculous. There's just so much. It's not about anyway. Okay, but
yeah, there's so much wrong there.
I desperately want to understand this, because again, I'm fighting. A lot of this is me fighting my impulse to be compassionate and understanding. My natural inclination towards empathy is actually I'm always fighting that with this, and that's why I think on some level my reaction is to laugh at it, because it's the only way I can sort of release that dissonance, because it's absurd. And
exactly.
And well, you're a psychologist, you know that a fundamental part of a strong person and sense of self is healthy boundaries. Right?
Exactly.
And the ability to set boundaries and respect boundaries from
even if you don't like them, even if they're hard for you.
Yeah. So this strikes right at the heart of who we are, not only just as citizens, but as people. But yeah. Anyway, the fact that they can even entertain this case, and again, for those that aren't familiar, it's not about this particular case. It's about the laws that have enabled this to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm appalled. I'm both American and Canadian, and I've always considered myself very progressive, and which instilled on a lot of issues, like
what do you mean?
Leftist.
Don't you have tiki torches and
what?
Tiki torches and lynchings on Saturdays? I do.
Well, but I've always been and so proud of Canada.
Yeah.
I voted for I always vote in the States Democrat and in Canada Liberal. And I just, I thought when Bill C-16 came to be, and I read up on that, that's the I don't know if you're familiar with that.
It's the Human Rights Amendment to include change sex to gender. It's very similar to the GRA,
sex
isn't
is
it?
still there. Sex is still there.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So it's not replaced. They're in competition. Okay.
That's what I find highly ironic.
I didn't know that.
Because so it was in June 2017, and so they added gender identity or expression in a few places in the Canadian Human Rights Act. And the other, I've written this down, the other groups are age, race, sex, religion, and disability. And so let me just see. So in terms of where they were added in 3 places. So one was to protect from discrimination. And that would include the pronoun use. However, they claimed,
and that's the thing Jordan Peterson was famous for objecting to, right?
That's what?
Yeah, is that the thing that Jordan Peterson
rose
to fame over?
At the time, the time I disliked Jordan Peterson, and
we've got some unlikely friendships and allies these days, don't we?
Yes, I might not agree with all his views, but I was like, he was the canary in the coal mine. He was right.
Yeah.
And now I understand where he was coming from. And the second area is hate speech.
Yeah, that old nugget.
But that's a higher bar. That would be like advocating genocide.
Yeah, so that's like an incitement to violence, like the laws here.
Exactly, which Twitter seems to think that, saying he instead of she.
Saying no.
And the third is sentencing hate crime.
Yeah.
So that's where it was added, but those all include the other groups I mentioned, including sex. And I read through, it isn't really that long, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and it doesn't really explain what the heck is gender identity or expression. And I have a real problem as a former researcher if something isn't operationally defined. And anytime I was looking through just on the weekend some different stuff, and professionals often use the word gender to define gender. So it's like, what?
So begging the question. 101, psychology.
It's like gender identity.
It's gender identity. Yeah, exactly.
And
it's obvious.
It sounds a little suspicious. So, at the time when this was introduced, I believe, I don't want to misspeak, but I believe Megan Murphy was very vocal about it.
Yeah.
And I thought, how horrid.
She hates trans
and
people.
Jordan Peterson and a number of people said, whoa, we're entering some questionable territory. Let's take a step back. Let's not, and then, but it was put in. And so, as a result, we've got JY, and what's happening over there. And I don't know how sex is trumped, again, by gender identity. Because it is in there as a protected class, and those are women.
Yeah.
So...
Hopefully.
But I guess if they are considered a woman as well. You might want to delete my pronoun there. Then I don't know.
Yeah.
But.
Well, apparently, I saw on Twitter that it's transphobic to call them trans now. So apparently we've got permission. I don't fucking know anymore. And I know there's a number of trans people on Twitter who are appalled. Some have. I had a lovely friend who has dropped, and it's like, this is too stressful. There's so much ridiculousness Yeah.
I've been living a good life. A number say I recognize that my biological sex is male, because it's usually, and I'm not talking about the people who have said this. I'm talking about kind of the trans umbrella. The loudest people seem to be
transsexuals,
trans women.
Yeah.
In quotes, because it just seems like there's some people who, and I know you can't decide, well, who is real or whatever, but
I think you can.
Who see some reality and say, wait a minute, I know I am biologically male. I found it so painful. And again, I'm just paraphrasing, but I found it so unbearable. I made these changes. I respect women's spaces.
Yeah.
I want to be treated with dignity as the person I am, but I'm not going to, stamp out other people's rights. And I respect these trans women. Like I'm like,
me too.
Yeah, I get that. And a number have left, and I don't blame them, because it's ridiculous. It's getting so ridiculous.
Well, apparently
and goes against
trans
their
women,
own beliefs.
Yeah, trans women who disagree, transsexuals who disagree, intersex who disagree, anyone who disagrees is a trans exclusionary radical feminist. And radical feminism is not extremist feminism. It's a term for the second wave feminists. Okay, I just want to make it clear. It's actually real feminism. We should change the R to real feminism. I think we're trying to do that, aren't we?
I think you should trademark that. I think that's a great idea, actually.
But I think the thing that's been really hurtful for most, I'm sure you can relate to this as well, and other people that I've talked to, is people who don't actually know any trans people calling people a TERF when I know trans people, and I'm not doing that. And then they go, "Oh, I've got a black friend." And I go, "No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I've had a lot of people very angry saying these bastards don't represent us." And but the problem is that people have been, but they also don't distance themselves from it, and that's the thing that I think it hurts, because I know all of us have lost friends over this stuff, and I will definitely continue to lose friends.
Definitely, I on my friends in the world, and friends who are also like Facebook friends. There's two people actually who are psychologists that I know well, and one's stepchild has come out as I don't want to give too much information, but as trans, and has a lot of other difficulties. And my friend, I believe, is kind of appalled by the healthcare system, because unlike what people keep saying, her, I'll say, former stepson, now stepdaughter, was able to just go to the family doctor, and I believe within 1 or 2 visits, no assessment, got the hormones.
Yeah.
So it's not this slow, at least not in Canada. And the other person, they are fully supporting the transition of their child. And I don't feel, I'm very careful. With what I don't say anything, and then I feel like I'm not really being myself, but I just don't say anything about anything really on Facebook. I made the mistake, well, I don't really think it's a mistake, but I live in a very kind of hippie neighborhood, city. We're known in Canada as probably one of the most progressive cities. And someone down the road, but I didn't know it was them. Someone on this huge neighborhood thread, or no, actually it was my husband. I'm going to blame him. My husband put on this thread that he had been at a park. He didn't say what park. And he saw a little child came up to him and said, I'm non-binary, and then ran and played at the playground. And wasn't this hilarious? So cute. And so I saw that.
I have no nonverbal cues, so I just heard Ralph Wiggum then.
I didn't even think, I thought he was talking about a strange child, like a stranger.
Me.
And
yeah.
I said, oh, I don't find that so cute. What 4-year-old would have any idea about, I feel like, not a boy and not a girl? And I said, huh. And then the mother, because it turned out it's our neighbor, gets on. And it's the most horrific now. I'm known as the bigot in the neighborhood. I would never have said anything like directly. I never I thought this was some child randomly. I was like, thanks a lot to my husband. So I know the general view is this is so wonderful. And I'm thinking, how can a 4-year-old, why would a 4-year-old say, I'm non-binary? What the heck does that even mean? What is wrong with this picture? Now, maybe they're just letting the child do whatever, and then they're never going to do anything else. But it just, what's going on? This isn't, and I'm sure they're good parents. It's not that.
No.
But this is like a cult. Why? It just blew my mind that a 4-year-old would run up to my husband and say that, and everyone else on the thread thought it was great. And so then I said, I'm sorry if I offended people and I got off.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were all appalled by me. But anyway, it just showed me the average person.
Did they know who you are? Did they know that you are a relatively intelligent person and a good person? And the thing that concerns me most about this is just how little benefit of the doubt there is.
Exactly.
I've had this happen where, I'm not someone who, I'm no shrinking violet, and I am quite, if I say something, it's with conviction, and it means that I can back it, generally, right? The only time I don't back myself is when I think that something is a waste of time, and I don't bother. They haven't won. I've just gone, you're not worth the time. And the thing that's woken me up a little bit is how little people that I thought trusted me, or thought that I was cleverer than you get what that's why it feels, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about this a lot, which is those overlaps between what Scientology is like and what this is like.
Good
that
point.
really creepy kind of thing where and I know people are going, oh, it's a cult, but I actually it feels like a phenomenon. Sorry, the human's first online cult, right? Our very first online religion. Because if you actually look at that grooming behavior, the fact that you need to do an identity audit frequently, check your privilege, check your privilege. It feels a bit like an audit, doesn't it? You got to keep checking your privilege.
Oh, that's a good point.
And
any cult has a
levels,
very an intense ideology.
Yeah,
and a really, and when you talk about online, like a strong, cohesive group, and often, and I'm sure you know this, but will encourage members from distancing themselves from family or friends, especially those who don't hold those views.
We're your family,
and even
now.
encourage, and it can give a real, especially if you, and this is why I know that young people are so at risk, it can give you a real sense of identity if you're struggling to find that. And so you're vulnerable. And that's, I mean, if I, as a 40-something, fell into it, I mean, not wholly, I didn't suddenly realize I was trans, but I can just imagine, you know, part of adolescence is figuring out who you are, what does that mean, and it's a very vulnerable time, and that infuriates me, you know?
Well, if I was a teenager today, I would be in a gender clinic. I'll tell you that now. I know this. Because and I think maybe I've just got a finely tuned radar for bullshit in the sense, you know, that this kind of, because I said before, I do tend to be gullible and vulnerable. I've had to build that up. You know, I've had to build that. So, and I'm also just very sensitive to things like gaslighting and that kind of behavior. So for me, it sticks out. Like very, very, it's just, I have a very finely tuned radar for that kind of thing. And, but one thing that's worth observing is how the group behaves when you just disagree. Like one of the markers of a cult. And you know, the way that Scientology with this whole suppressive person thing, you are out. That's it. You're cancelled. That's it. You're done.
Well, and I find that the fact it has the, I'll say, cults has become so strong that both laws have been created, but also because I'm part of like a secret group of health professionals, even though I'm no longer working. But I have read up on what our health professionals of all types being told to do. And physicians and psychologists, it's affirmative care. And how I was trained was evaluate, differential diagnoses, so you're considering alternatives, very thorough. And they're saying, no, it actually, guidelines, I can't believe it, because it goes against, and I can only speak for psychologists, or I'm not speaking for them, but as a former one, that are training. Otherwise, why not go to your best friend instead of handing that? It's expensive to go to a psychologist unless it's a community-based one or a university one. Why be paying good money if they're just agreeing with you? Like, what is that about? I don't understand. And then they cite, and if you don't mind me just, because this makes me want to explode, is it reminds me, they cite these suicide statistics that aren't even accurate, or they're based on limited research, and they don't delve into what other factors are involved. They don't compare trans kids, with other who might have mental health issues with people who aren't trans who have mental. Exactly, and it also, that fear, the whole, it was part of what helped me change my views. Better a live daughter than a dead son. It reminded me, and this you probably know well about.
You get emotional blackmail.
Autism Speaks. Autism Speaks had actual public service messages, and I hope this doesn't upset you too much, but I'll just read
I don't care.
One is, they actually, it was unbelievable. I am autism, and it was a scary voice, like over this. I am autism. I'm in your children, but if I can help it, I'm invisible to you until it's too late. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you're happily married, I will make sure your marriage fails. I will bankrupt you for my own game. Another one is, I am autism. I have no interest in right or wrong. I derive great pleasure out of your loneliness, and you're scared, and you should be. You ignored me. That was a mistake. And the final one, this week is the week America will fully wake up to the autism crisis. If 3 million children in America one day went missing, can you imagine? What would we as a country do? We would call out the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. We would leave no stone unturned. These families are not living. This is a national emergency. We need a national autism plan now. And this terrified so many parents.
And here I was thinking I just didn't like supermarkets. Sorry, not to just to lighten the mood. I thought that I just was a bit annoying sometimes and didn't like supermarkets. That sounds a lot more dramatic.
You were a national emergency for Australia.
Oh, I am.
Like it's so.
I am now.
This rhetoric, though,
Fuck.
it is so similar to better a
Red's under the bed
than a dead son. And it's like this push. I feel bad for so many parents that are terrified. They get
Sounds like the communists are coming.
Yeah, it's like I've got to agree. I can't critically take a breath. I need to fully allow my, pissed off teen, as most are, to do this, even though it's permanent and their brains aren't fully formed, because it's going to be too late and they will kill themselves. I'm so angry at organizations that have that rhetoric.
My entire family is a national emergency. It's awesome.
My family and
feels like it when I'm trying to make dinner and compete with everyone's needs. Far out.
I hear ya.
And that's from an organization that claims to represent autism.
Mm-hmm. Autism Speaks, and it was this.
I didn't see that. That's
grandparents
atrocious.
Who had an autistic grandchild, and then somehow they gained so much power.
And then you wonder why the anti-vax movement loses their all sense of anything.
Exactly.
But the thing is, that's what I find interesting, is that you sit there watching people with, everyone's got dumb shit they believe on some level.
Yep.
I'm sure there's dumb shit I believe. Some people would argue that what the conversation that we're having now is a cult of yes, whatever. Okay. No, I'm just saying, it's all subjective, but we've all got stupid things that we believe. I used to think that a stealth bomber had special paint that made it invisible. But you grow up and you evolve and you learn that that's not the case, right?
Yeah. I believed I was adopted.
You don't go around insisting that that's true.
Exactly. Well, I believed this is really good. When I was, do you know the show Little House on the Prairie?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the daughters goes blind.
Yes.
I believed if you were blind, your other senses were more powerful. So I was like 9. And
Is that
I went
not true?
in a big backyard.
I thought that was true.
I went in, and I went in the backyard to the end of the backyard. I put a blanket on my head, and not only and obviously I wasn't really blind, right? Mm-hmm. But I thought I can't see, so I'm going to have magic powers. And I twirled around. I ran as fast as I could, and I knocked myself unconscious. I ran into a brick wall. Which explains a lot, probably, but like that.
But you did an experiment. You actually tested it.
I did. Yeah, that's a better way to look at it.
You were curious.
But I mean, that shows children don't always know best.
No.
Should a psychologist have affirmed my belief I could be blind? No.
No.
Anyway, or at least take the time to evaluate, right?
Yeah, and can I ask? I'm curious about this, because you are obviously gender affirming care seems to be an exception to everything else that you've been taught is correct. Like, and I know for me, because my qualifications are in politics and policy, my concerns are around the lack of consultation and that they haven't clearly identified. Like, one of the first things you do is identify the problem before you create the solution, and that you consult
exactly.
And there's a process to follow with policy, and that's a framework. So for me, it was an anchor to go, okay, that's why this doesn't make sense to me. The thing that I don't understand, because, having done a good chunk of postgrad psych as well, including the research methods class, how this has gotten to be the exception that where everything gets thrown out. What is this is where I don't understand necessarily, because it's against the duty of care. It's like all of these sorts of things. Or is it just that people know this but they don't want to say it because of the risk, because they've seen what's happened to those that speak up? Because I think that might actually be more of the case.
I think that a lot of people know it, but they're being pressured. I mean, I have here the guidelines for psychological practice with transgender and gender non-conforming people.
And they're extremely rigid. I know the APA here, the Psychological Society, like, for you to read, you keep your nose clean.
Yeah. Well, this one, it says, although the number of publications on this topic, on the topic of transgender affirmative practice has been increasing, this is still an emerging area. When possible, the task force relied on peer-revied publications, but books and reports,
but there aren't any. I wonder why.
Do not typically receive a high level of peer review, have also been cited, and it talks about. So in other words, they don't know what the hell they're doing.
And then it links to an article on Pink News, does it?
Yeah, they need more research. But go for it, and it's all about affirming. And I never, ever was taught that. I mean, I was taught, and this also makes me angry. The Canadian Code of Ethics for Psychologists, looking at Canada now. Yeah. And you're supposed to go, there's, I believe, 4 principles. So you go with the first one first, when possible. The first one is respect for the dignity of persons and peoples. And the second one is responsible caring. Yeah. Well, to me, responsible caring does not mean instantly affirming. No. I had people who came in and they were certain they had this going on, and it was actually this. Yeah. But I respected their dignity. It did, and that's separate from affirming. And then when you go to responsible caring, which involves treatment, which also involves assessment, I find it irresponsible that you're discouraged from digging deeper. I mean, some people, thankfully, view affirmative caring as, I respect that you believe this, but I'm going to evaluate it. But it's being pushed differently. Yeah. And in my little secret group, there's for example, an endocrinologist who
is that Dr. William?
Is incredible. Pardon?
Is that Dr. William? No, the guy he was on.
I'm trying to
is he on
Twitter? Trying to remember.
He was on Benjamin's show.
I only know him from Facebook, and I'm trying to remember who. But and imagine the pressure if you're the one who is supposed to be giving the hormones. Although the one thing I read from is for primary care physicians to be doling these things out, which is very alarming to me. the whole thing is just, can't we take a breath? Can't we take a step back? Stop the rhetoric. Where, if in any other situation, you're looking, for example, eating disorders was a big area for me. So if we're looking at anorexia, so, looking at body image stuff, it has a high rate of suicide, or bipolar disorder has a high rate of suicide. Yeah. Are we going to use those things to agree to whatever the client says, or are you going to be aware and try to help them in other ways? And I'm not saying, I want to be clear, I'm not saying someone who's struggling with gender identity is necessarily having a psychiatric illness or disorder. I'm not saying that, but I'm using those as an example, that someone who's anorexic and is terrified if they eat, they will become obese or lose control. It's, okay, how can I help with that? I am not going to affirm you be 80 pounds, or someone bipolar. I'm not going to affirm that you are going to be the prime minister. But what are we, how can I help? Or this is in my, again, I'm not working as a psychologist anymore. But so I find this push, I'm wondering, where is it coming from? Given everything I read says this is a emerging field of research, this is new, we are relying sometimes on case studies, this has a small number of participants, it all implies that good research is happening, but we don't know enough to take that leap. I mean, there was one, something came out yesterday. I wish I had it before me. I think it was from Tavistock. I'm not sure. And they had been using the puberty blockers for younger.
It was Tavistock.
And found that once on them, there was actually reported a higher rate of suicidal ideation. Now, that doesn't mean that's true for everyone, because that's just one study, right? But if we're looking at other small studies, let's all try to, because we're, especially with children, and I know that's separate than bodied males and female spaces, which is very important. But when you're looking at children and you're doing things that are permanent medically, can we not take a step back without being totally freaked out that everyone's going to kill themselves suddenly? Because if they, let's deal with that risk, but that risk shows me, if anything, let's halt the transitioning. You're not stable enough. You know what I mean? Let's not go further here. Anyway.
No,
sorry, that was a tangent.
No, it was a good one. it's because that's one area that we've. I think the two areas that I suppose I focus on, just because it's so big and it's just stuff that I know about better. Just where I draw the line is with kids, and I think and just observing, if you've got teenagers right now, you know what's up. There's
exactly.
It's the trend that's sweeping the nation, and we need to be concerned. I'm not Henny Penny. I'm not sitting here saying that the sky's falling. I'm not that kind of person. So, but it's becoming increasingly clear that there's something up here, and there's
I so agree.
And it's very concerning. But yeah, self-ID is the issue, and kids are the two things that I think, which brings me back to this idea of the peak. So you as a Cancer-y, I guess of sorts, you Nazi adjacent, or whatever whatever the words are. I shouldn't say that because people will take that out of context. She admitted
Yeah,
it.
no, I'm not. I swear I'm not.
No, this, this actually, I just wanted to go back to something that you said because this is something that I've observed, and I don't know if you saw my video yesterday yet about this inclusion guide. I read it out, and it is and inclusive language resources at the University of Colorado. You should read it. It is an absolute treat. And
oh no,
it is it's delicious. It's equal parts just anger and it's a roller coaster, but it's funny. A list of words you can't say, or you should really think about them, right? Anyway, but my point, what you said about affirmative care, and what I'm wondering here is, and I don't know. Again, this is a predominantly autistic trait, but it's also might be an increasingly generational one. With maybe something's happening with brains where they're more literal, in the sense that my understanding, with affirmative care, I know the intent behind these things, which is that was to empathize and show empathy for the patient. It's not necessarily to enable them, right? And I think this idea of subtext and this distortion of, and even JY's case, in the sense that it's like that's not what it's for. That's not what it was intended for.
It's being used in that way.
You're loopholing language and deconstructing it to the point where it actually doesn't have its original meaning anymore. And all of these, social. It's worth looking at these words because this distortion of sociological terms. It's just if I was a conspiracy theorist, it feels like almost like an anti-intellectual movement, where they're changing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If you've studied, I'm sure you did some sociology as part of your stuff, and this idea of the norms and deviances and all of this, and philosophy and all those things, and they actually just don't mean the things that they say they mean. It's actually just the wrong meaning. If you actually have read Marx or you've actually read these things, they literally just take the word at its literal meaning, not the word intersectionality is quite a Nazi fascism. They're actually quite narrow. they're left wing. The words don't have meaning anymore with this crew. They're literally saying
exactly
that, and it's almost like a lack of education. I don't know whether it's a lack of education, because this is being with very smart people. And this is why I was asking you about how the dissonance that must be occurring, because these are people that are trained in XYZ method, an XYZ process. But here they're not. How they reconcile that exception, I that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I think, this is my guess.
Yeah.
That because LGB has been so fused with T,
that guilt,
and there's this huge trans umbrella happening.
Yeah.
That you would definitely, thankfully now, it took psychiatry forever, but recognizes that sexual orientation, whether hetero, gay, lesbian, bisexual, is not deviant, right?
That's right.
It's obvious. Just like you have blue eyes or brown, whatever. It's obvious.
So is it some of that like shared guilt, that collective guilt from previous mistakes? I think that baggage with psychology.
It's now like, okay, we recognize, so you don't have to evaluate. Someone says they're lesbian, if they're being discriminated against, you might be providing them support for that. But you would never be evaluating. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you immediately are aware. Okay, that is real. That is who they are. That is, I'm not going to, and I feel like it's been carried over to something that is grayer.
Yeah.
That is, we're still figuring out, that is getting mixed with a lot of confused kids, and it might be being used by certain individuals to harm women. And it's not the same. Like, it's so bizarre to me that it's mixed in. And so that's my kind of sense, my own personal sense.
Is it a shared guilt, perhaps? Like, I know that for a lot of people, this whole white guilt idea as well. I can't remember the author.
We're not going to evaluate this, even though...
because we've been wrong before.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've been wrong before, and we don't want to make that mistake again, and then accidentally go and make a more catastrophic mistake.
Exactly.
In line with lobotomies.
This is not the same thing. This is not sexual orientation. This is not the same thing. Yeah, that's just my sense of even a little piece of where this is coming from. But yeah, I'm horrified by self-ID. Like, and there's things that are so ridiculous. Like, and I'm like, are you serious? Like, this must be a joke.
Did you see my tweets about Demigirl the other day?
Pardon?
Sorry.
What?
Did you see my Demigirl thing where the pink and grey flag? Did you see the definition of Demigirl? Where it's like, sometimes you're a girl, but you don't have to be a biological female, but sometimes you're a boy, whether you identify. And I'm just like, who thinks like this? Well,
that's exactly, there was this person.
Like, and you have a flag.
People thought this was great. This guy who has two cards, sometimes he's John, sometimes he's Marie, and he's like a firefighter or something, and he'll just bring in the card to so they all know to say she or he. And I'm like, no,
it's cosplay.
I would not. That is so, and I'm sure many people that I respect who are, that we talked about, who are transsexuals. That's ridiculous. I'm just gonna, that's ridiculous. No, you're not. You might feel whatever you feel. Being female is not a feeling, but, if you want to call yourself John one day and go for it, I'm not going to, I'm just going to say hi. Or I might avoid you altogether. But I'm not going to do, it's so ridiculous. And again, Jordan Peterson predicted a lot of this. And I thought, oh, what a horrific, how can he be a psychologist? It's so horrific. And
he's actually a very, very good one.
Canada.
I actually, the one thing I say is that as a political commentator, Jordan Peterson is an excellent clinical psychologist. He should stay there.
Yeah, exactly.
If he stayed there,
he just.
Because honestly, some of that data it did make me rethink some of the pay gap stuff and the career stuff around in the Nordic states, and it makes sense. The being an empiric, it made sense. Again, I don't know what you have to say about it, but that I'm of the view that it's not evolution of nature or nurture; it's both. So evolution.
That's a good point.
We evolve to survive in the culture. So the culture. The culture. If women evolve to survive, certain traits will be preferred by evolution. Right? So the answer is both. And I hate this war where it's like gender is a social construct or biology. It's like, no, evolution. It's both. But it's actually the fact that women have evolved to survive within patriarchy. So therefore, there's certain characteristics. I'm way out of my lane here, but this is just from what I've been reading, where I sit there and I go, can't it be both? Which is that this is a survival thing of thousands of years. That it is genetically favorable to have certain personality traits as a woman.
That's I haven't thought a lot about that, but that sounds intriguing. That sounds
they work in parallel.
A lot of what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah, they seem to, it seems to me, because I sort of I walk multi-disciplines, and I take it all in, and I sit there, it seems obvious that it's both and they work in conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
And one does not negate the other. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so but yeah, anyway, that's just it's a whole other thing. um No, but it just seems interesting that everyone is debating about shit they don't even understand. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying very hard not to do that. I just wandered way out of my expertise, and I'm probably really wrong, but I acknowledge that. But I sit there but I'm not going to sit there and push that theory and write a book about it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and build an audience saying it. I'm going to say, oh, that's an interesting thought, and I'll park that over there, and then I'll learn more and see if it's right. That's just thinking. It's not. I don't understand this surface level. I mean, we can't possibly know everything in the world, and I think that part of it is that. It's probably just that people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
don't know, and they take things on as pattern memory, and they just take things on surface level, right? But at the same time,
Well, even for sure. I mean, psychology. I have right before me here the DSM-4 TR, which was the revision of the DSM-4.
yeah,
I learned on the DSM-4, so that's what psychologists, psychiatrists use to diagnose mental disorders.
yeah,
And so that was it was created, I think, in 1994.
mm-hmm.
And then I then worked, I think it was in 2000, the DSM-4 TR, I think. So suddenly there were some changes. So I was now working, well, that was just when I'm trying to think, becoming a psychologist. But the stuff I'd learned in grad school, some of the diagnoses didn't exist anymore. Like it was, so it's this, and then the DSM-5, which I don't have a copy of. I've read a lot of it. Don't want to spend the money, but things again are changed. So like psychology is a very fluid field, just because this diagnosis is now there doesn't mean with more research, it will still be viewed in the same way. And that's, again, I come down to where's the evidence, where is the basis, and what the women I used to argue with, and I get really mad. No, I can't believe it. But on
Unleash
Twitter,
the anger, it's good.
I would say, they'd say, how do you know, I'd say that trans women are women because they feel like women. And they say, what does feeling like a woman mean? Yeah. And I wasn't able to, and as
then
a
they block you.
psychologist, I'm, again, no longer a psychologist, but as a former one, I was trained to be more critical, to think, okay, what do I mean by feeling? But I couldn't do it. And then I get really annoyed. And I'd say, you're transphobic or some stupid thing. Because
so that's interesting. Yeah.
Like, what does it, I knew stereotypes. So what does it mean to feel like a woman? Well, I know I am one. Well, how do you know? Okay, well, I'm a adult, I'm a human, I'm female. Okay. But how, but because especially I've never been a adult human male, I can't even, if we're talking about feelings, I can't really say what that feels like. Yes. I can say what I think, but is that enough for me to be a man today? Because today Alicia's saying she's now Alex. Like, again, and should I be now allowed to go in any male place? I know there's a difference here because I'm not physically probably a risk to anyone, but just because I'm now thinking I feel this way, like, what does that mean? How can we, again, take a step back? It doesn't mean that no one, I personally, and I know Others don't necessarily agree. I personally do believe, and I don't know exactly what it is, but that gender dysphoria exists.
Oh, yeah.
I also believe that the majority probably don't actually have that. I don't know what does that actually mean.
Well, the behaviors are indicating that.
Yeah, and
I mean, the
and
autogynephilia is rife.
Yeah, and again,
it's
if
disgusting.
if it's an adult,
yeah.
So an adult, I feel, is very different than a kid in terms of surgeries and stuff. If you're an adult making these choices and aren't living in fantasy land, so you still recognize, yes, biologically I'm male, so if you know, my prostate needs to be examined, it's a male prostate, you know. This is my authentic life, so I am living as a trans woman, and I feel like trans woman. What's wrong with having that as a separate category?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I think that's where I was lost as well. Where I was like I am fight for your spaces. That's great. Have spaces. That's great. I'll be front and center. I think that was the bit for me as well.
That kind of pushed me over very much. It was like, no, you aren't. My view is no, you are not a woman. And I'm not going to say that I'm a cis woman, although I did back in the day when the kind of cult thing, I'm a woman.
No,
I'll say you're a trans woman. I feel comfortable, not with everybody, not with a certain individual we're all aware of.
Yeah. Just taking
but a number of people, I feel very comfortable saying you're a trans woman. Very comfortable. But you're not a woman, and that's okay. When did it become bad? Like,
have you seen Rose's videos?
Celebrate that?
Have you seen Rose of Dawn's video? Have you seen Rose of Dawn's videos?
Oh yes, I love her. Yes,
she's just I'm a tranner and a tranny and all this stuff, and she's
I love her. I absolutely love her, and it's like
she's so droll and funny.
You know, like, and I know I can't speak for someone else, but how can we, you know, again, I don't want to talk about kids, but for adults, you know, that can be a good thing to be. You don't have to say now, I mean, it's gone so crazy. I have a female penis. No, you don't. No, you don't. And I'll say it one more time. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, something else is going on, you know, something else is going on. And that's where I see this distinction from people who I really believe for themselves need to live as a trans woman, from people who are insisting they always actually were a woman. And there's someone who I just can't even. There's somebody. It's a big book deal in Canada, and her child came out as trans. Fine. And then her spouse of 20 years, then a husband, came out also as trans. Okay. She is a huge advocate for the trans community. She has a big book coming out. But the thing, and she has caused, I mean, this is just what I've heard, because as I don't want to speak for lesbians, but she is like poking the bear. It says she's super gay now because she's a lesbian because she's married to a woman. And it was like this was your husband for 20 years. And I you know, like, and constantly pushes and says super gay, like, and constantly, like, it's so people who are, I saw that a number of lesbians were getting quite upset by this, that you're invalidating, basically. Like, you're not even saying, I don't know what, I don't want to get into that person.
It feels like cosplay. Feels like the pride flag has become a fandom and just another thing that you dress up as. Yes. It's not, especially, and without any understanding of the struggles and the history, and woman is now another form of costume. that
Exactly.
has so much, like the thing, women.
It's
It's just
about
crazy
our
without any understanding of how
yeah.
we're even here. Like the history of what it means and the shared history and the way they're behaving shows they have no idea what it's like to be a
Yeah.
woman and to be treated as a woman from the
And
day that you're born, right? And it's okay if
exactly.
somebody comes in and I'm of the view. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but
No, that's okay.
we mentioned Rose before, and I don't want to talk about her too much behind her back. But
Mhm.
one thing that strikes me about her is that she's actually fucking suffered. And I say, well, you know what? You've suffered. You've earned this. Congratulations. You're one of us. I know that sounds
Mhm.
weird.
Mhm.
Somewhere in my mind, I think that somewhere it just makes I can't explain the thought process, but I sit there and go, yeah, I think you know what it means.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that necessarily, but she acknowledges that she's biologically male. But I'm also saying that you've got to earn at least a little bit of it
Yeah.
to be
And
part of the
the
club, right?
total exactly the
Yeah,
total
you got to work,
self
shave.
entitlement. Yeah, the total self
Fuck.
entitlement
Yeah.
and it of Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
why,
Mm.
who I have never had the displeasure of, and I will say meeting just because we did have an interaction.
Oh, you did?
Someone who at least displays, I am not trying to diagnose, I'm no longer a
No.
psychologist, and I
Yeah.
haven't met this person, making that clear.
Speculation.
But such narcissistic
Oh, that's not a diagnosis.
qualities
That's a
in the person
certainty.
before, and it just,
Yeah.
I am so. It is so. I think it puts a huge blemish on Canada
Yeah.
that this has been allowed because they could have refused to accept the complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, that's what I find amazing.
or they evaluate it themselves, but it doesn't go further.
You just
You
get
know,
the fuck
the
out of
fact
here.
that this
Yeah.
has gone this far
Yeah.
is it's rape culture. Quite frankly, it's so obscene. I mean, some of it is laughable, but it's made me feel ill. When I read the very brave person who did the transcriptions,
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's cracker.
it's like, how dare you? You know, you're talking about someone, for example, I mean,
Yeah.
a woman should be able to say no for any reason.
Yeah.
But there, you know, a
But
Sikh
asking her.
woman who
Yeah.
her very religion prohibits her from not only touching male genitals, but hugging a male friend.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you have the audacity
Yeah.
to do this, Jessica? Like, how dare you? And you threaten, and I have evidence because they threatened me.
Yeah.
At the opening of a DM conversation
And
where
can I
I
just
reached out because I was worried they were suicidal.
yeah.
Um,
Can I just say
and
that
even
Exhibit
knowing
A,
that
Exhibit A, that you're not a woman.
I can read you the first part. It says because I reached out despite having been. This is the first ban I got, and it was only thanks to Graham and so many amazing women and men who basically beat down Jack and Twitter that I got reinstated.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this time that's not going to, even if people did that, it's not going to happen. But when I was off, someone, I will put friend in quotes, benefit of the doubt, of Jessica, targeted me. So I was banned. They impersonated my father on Facebook, a picture of my elderly father with my son, sent me a horrible message. They contacted my publisher, screaming at her that I am homophobic, which is insane, and transphobic, and to delist me or there would be consequences. So her home phone. Now
Her
this
home
part's funny
phone.
because on her home phone. And this part's somewhat amusing because I really don't care. On Amazon, posted with the initials JY, like, do not buy these books. The author's transphobic. So all that had happened.
It's a meme at this point, right?
Yeah, and so I personally believe it was Jessica, but Jessica claims it was a good friend named Jessica.
Yeah. Jessica claims a lot of things.
Original.
Jessica claims a lot of things. Yes.
Yeah, so despite this, and I don't want to make myself seem like, oh, I'm so great, because no, I'm not. But Jessica had someone directed me to a video on Facebook. This is once I'd come back, that they were speaking of killing themselves. And I don't care who you are, that concerns me. So I reached out, I opened my direct messages, and I said, hey, if you want to, DM me, I'm here. So this was I don't have it all here, but I can read you a little. This is how.
So this is after Jessica you had experienced this harassment.
Yes. And they, in the DM, admit it was their friend with anger issues. So they admit at least to, but I mean, we'll leave that how it is,
The same friend who was asking for the waxing for?
No, it was someone named Jessica. So, very original. So anyway, this is how they started it. Because I had said, I hope you're okay or something.
Yeah.
And first, it shows a glimpse into a bizarre mind, because one, they know I don't like how I feel about them. So it starts with threatening me with legal action if I share this. And at this point, it's like, you know what? Give me a break. At this point, the more litigious this person is, the less they're taken seriously.
Yeah.
And they've been warned about that, actually. So, and I didn't share this until other things the person did. But said, I haven't been okay. If I was to say that, I'm not mad at you because of my article in the Feminist Current that includes about JY.
Yeah.
I would be lying. No one knows what I have. What I will say to you is 100% confidential. If this gets disclosed or released in any means, or even as if they're a lawyer, or even dissected in any manner, I will be taking legal action. And then they go on, it's quite lengthy, about how they OD daily, which I've never heard of that before. But here we're talking about the tampon thing then. And the pageant, okay? This is when they were in the Miss BC pageant. And I said, they said something about being scared. I said, you act the opposite of scared. You say you're the spokesperson for tampons. For fuck's sake. You post a picture of a little girl at a pageant. Why do this unless you're hoping to self-destruct? And they said, because I don't want to show people I'm weak. That was like joining the pageant. That was to literally show people I will get attacked no matter what I say. So a friend and I came up with the stupidest thing people will attack, and they fell for it. Let me just see if I can get one more of this delightful convo. But it was like weirdly, and sent me all the, or many of the interactions with the plaintiffs, or I don't know legalese, the people
the respondents
they sued.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't even know if that was allowed in the middle. Oh, here's one. I'd appreciate if you retract your article. Blah, blah, blah. I said I won't retract my article.
Is that so this is the article on Feminist Current that started all of this shit show, right?
And then that was followed by Morgane did her blog. Okay, so I won't retract my article. I've gone through a rough time, yes. I've tried to kill myself daily, yes. I've OD'd daily on purpose. I'm on life watch. And as an aside, I've never heard of that in my life unless you're hospitalized. Yes, the cops know about me because I've tried to kill myself so many times. And I said, then you need to be admitted. I was trying to reach out. You need to be admitted into a hospital. No shame intended. You need someone to hold the heavy stuff you've been holding.
That was, can I just point out that was actually tremendously amazing of you to do that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
No. And I think that most of us actually, I don't think it's very, very hard to show empathy when someone is flinging like that. And that shows tremendous strength on your part. And it's yeah.
Well, thank you. It felt like such a, although I wasn't really surprised, but a kick in the teeth that after our conversation, Dan was talking about having mini strokes and that
it's really hard to know what's true anymore. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
I would never again, it afterwards felt very manipulative.
Yeah.
However, I did feel that there was some pain there and I didn't, however, at the same time, you can be concerned about someone who may or may not be mentally struggling and not condone their behavior, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, and I am so appalled by what this person has done in terms of, the putting these poor women through hell to achieve, I think, attention more than anything else.
Well, I know we're money, not. I know we're not diagnosing anyone here, but you and I both know that narcissists do feed off others' empathy. That narcissist empath dynamic. And I can't help but think that that's happening on a larger scale between TRAs and women.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
In the sense that, it's like that kind of, as a group, it seems like, and again, that's just because I'm got a radar for these sorts of things, that the gaslight, that whole, there's the suicide threats and those, that's the behavior of an abuser. It's just happening on a broader scale.
Exactly.
And capitalizing on women who, it was a tremendously good thing for you to reach out. But again, that feeds that same dynamic, doesn't it?
It's completely.
When you think about it,
it touched instantly.
We're too forgiving. We give them too many chances.
Yeah. And the fact, this individual is now, continuing, I'm sure the poor township council who have to let anyone present are rolling their eyes, but is now, I think, just presented about all body topless. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah. Swim. And I know, in my gut, I don't really know, but my gut tells me, because in Canada, I don't know about Australia, the law is that anyone, most people don't take this up, but anyone can go topless. Let's say it's a super hot day, or of course breastfeeding. So that law, because it's discriminating, if it's a super hot day, I've never seen women take off their shirts and walk around, but still you could. And so JY,
again,
yes, I'm concerned about the age group and stuff, but I believe that this could be the next human rights filing. Because, there's no reason in this ridiculous swim event to actually include topless, because it's already known you can go topless. No one does it in public pools that I've seen. No female. Like, no one with breasts.
Again, it's that distortion of the intent of the law. It's like it's that everybody knows what it's like. Everyone knows what that meant.
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
you're taking the piss. That's what we say in Australia. You're taking the piss.
Yeah. And there was, yeah, it was actually in my city that the law started.
Yeah.
So it was a very hot day in 1991, and a young woman took off her shirt.
Yeah.
And the police arrested her. And so it went.
Okay.
So there you go. And but it's not like it's there so that there's not discrimination. But most women, because of lecherous
we know what it means.
People don't choose it, but they have that. So
because we live in society, there's a social contract.
Yeah, like maybe if it was at a beach but JY, the fact that JY included it in this presentation, if they turn it down, well, and they don't give a good reason, because it's just an event at a pool, for LGBT. Of course, it is without parents, which is, but if they turn it down, JY, and I put that on Facebook group. Don't want to say which Facebook group, but that I think that's what's going to happen. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and I do believe at this point, which I'm very pleased with, that the tribunals, if you're seen as litigious, eventually it's like, no, we're not taking another one from you.
This has blown up.
So
I can't see this ever. I can't see how another woman could rule in their favour. That said,
exactly.
I did read that this can actually go to the Supreme Court. You can actually appeal this as well, right?
I think it will.
Yeah.
And
it's not over, ladies.
That if it goes in the favor of JY, it's going to be appealed.
Yeah. Oh, but if it doesn't,
I think there'll be such a huge. I know there's right now a GoFundMe. If anyone's listening, GoFundMe page that's been established. I'm not sure by who, but to help pay these women their legal costs, and the rest going to the Vancouver Rape Relief Center, which I'm very happy about, because they're not getting funds anymore because they said no to trans women. Can
I just, for those that are listening, can I just say that that's actually somebody who is an ally and supporter of JY. JY is not an outlier. JY has been supported up until very recently by people who shut down rape. So I just want to make it clear that we could talk for 6 hours on the history of this, but
and soon
it'll unfold.
Go, so.
Yes, exactly. And I really just want to get to the like how things are now and what it looks like for you, because there's been a lot of damage to your career. I don't know if it is. I think this is always going to be a phoenix rising from the ashes. Women are very resilient.
Well,
that's the thing. That's the thing that they don't realize is how strong women actually are. Generally,
one thing that happened was, and this was completely my fault, completely. So, but if JY situation did not exist, and if I hadn't been targeted, this wouldn't have occurred. And I don't want to name her in case she doesn't want me to, but a woman, just when I came back and I'd been targeted, a lovely woman, I believed it was JY, said some things, and so I just blasted her. Because I was sure it was them. And so I was just I couldn't believe that my father had been impersonated, but it turns out it wasn't him. So she filed a complaint against me. So with my college, that's my, professional organization. And they took it seriously, and I was sent the stuff. And I was horrified by how I sounded because I thought it was JY. Not that that excuses it, but and so I didn't defend myself. I thoroughly apologized to the person who now I know, and we quite respect each other. Lovely person. And I gave some background of I didn't defend, but just explanation. Like this is, I acted totally inappropriate. And I probably embarrassed the college. Like and I included Morgane's blog as background. And then I tendered my resignation. So that means I am definitely not a psychologist. And that was hard. And people, Ken Zucker contacted me, who I don't know personally, but I respect. And some others saying, please don't. What's happening? Don't, because I put on Twitter, I'm going to tender. So that's different from just being retired or whatever. I can still say I'm a former psychologist. Yeah. And I always have those skills. But that was something I worked so hard for. And again, I do not blame the person who lodged a complaint because she was shook up. Like, who's this crazy woman saying I'm someone else? She didn't know anything that was happening, right?
But this is what it's a psychological warfare, and they put you into this state.
Now she's involved with what's going on. Which I'm glad. I'm not glad that she was pushed into this stuff, but respects me. I respect her greatly. And it was my fault. Like, it was an innocent person. I should have taken a step back, calmed down, and tried to see, is this really who I think versus, you know what I mean? But
so is there any opportunity for you to rejoin given the circumstances?
I think no. Yes, but I don't want to. I don't.
Okay.
I highly respect the discipline. I think I can use my skills in other ways. Okay. And it's been a number of years. It was when around the time when one of my little guys, I have 4 kids, and the one who has autism, and doing great. But at that time, he was really, really struggling with behaviors. And me, I was working in another city, and I was struggling with mood stuff, and it was too much. So it's not important enough just to hold the title. I know I have the skills, and no one can take away the PhD. Yeah. And really, that's probably the most important. No one can take away me calling myself doctor if I choose. Yeah. Or the experience I have. No. Have it, But and again, it was not due to that woman. It was due to me. Yeah. But if this poisonous situation,
it was reactive,
toxic. Yeah. Yeah. If this kind of poisonous, toxic, sludgy situation wasn't occurring, we wouldn't be getting these kind of situations. No.
But this is what it does. Before, it eats you.
Yeah, and I was shocked. I worked for years and years as a psychologist, and with some populations that are more likely to file a complaint against you. And I never had one. So I was very, so this was a real wow, I got to take a step back from a certain person. And, but now I feel like I'm free to, I'm not in any way influencing people's views at the college. If that makes any sense. I feel more free, I guess, and I can focus on being a writer. So, but anyway, me, other people massively have been impacted, such as Megan Murphy. She wrote about, she doesn't even think she'll be employable because of this. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's absolutely disgraceful. It's just not okay. I don't think that there comes a point where once you see the damage that's done, it doesn't matter what your views are. If you're a decent person, you know that this is not okay. It's like this, that the Andy No stuff where it's like there comes a point where we all agree reasonable people don't justify the behavior of thugs.
Exactly.
You know? And it doesn't matter if we agree politically or not, because the thing that concerns me about Canada is that I'm seeing a lot of the sort of the right gloating, saying, "Oh well, we told you." It's like, well, no, this is actually just a failure of something else. It's not. It doesn't.
That I
agree. Calm down, but it's concerning. It's concerning because these idiots are going to get Trump. Trump's going to win. It's going to be a landslide because these idiots are handing them the election. I mean it.
A bad feeling.
The second I saw Elizabeth Warren's pronouns, I called it. Because most ordinary people, ordinary decent people, don't stand for this. They don't. They go. Canada and Australia are very similar, I think, in many ways, and we got a strong sense of fairness. And I don't like using common sense, but that common sense fairness, like as in, like we know, everybody collectively knows that they're taking the piss out of these laws. It's like we know what that meant. Don't be a douche. You're being a dickhead. Like that's basically how most people would feel. And most people go, come on. It's So I'm just hoping that we can draw a line in the sand, and I just want to see women. I just don't want to see any more people ruined from this. I mean, yeah, the fact that they impersonated your dad is just atrocious. And your publisher's personal number?
Well, my publisher called me, very shook up and saying, "Is this true?" And I was like, she's like, "This doesn't sound like you. I've published 3 of your books. This is not the Alicia I know. What is happening? Are you like?" And I was. It was this horrible situation. I have to explain to her, I think I'm being stalked because blah, blah, blah. And then I just thought, what the hell? And I just wrote her, a pretty lengthy email saying that I definitely respect people, and I definitely believe in people having rights and et cetera, et cetera. And so she was like, okay, thank you, I understand. But it was very frightening for her. I mean, can you imagine screaming at her?
Yeah.
Like how they got her number, I have no idea. And then my father, a few people got things that they thought was my father. And the most wonderful thing, well, it's not wonderful. And it might be coincidence, but from the person pretending to be my dad, said, "Have you heard the good news?" And to me, impersonating my father. And and I thought, what good news? And 5 minutes later, I get a message from Twitter, my appeal's been denied. Now, you start to get paranoid, but it's like, was there any connection? I don't know. I have no idea.
You know what? I have no doubt that there's someone at Twitter who has access to this. It doesn't make any sense. The only explanation. I have my theories, and I have written them down on Megan Murphy's page, which is that JY has something on somebody from a forum somewhere that they've, something.
I think you're right.
Because
he
probably, I can't.
Of them with Biz.
Yeah.
Who's one of the heads of Twitter, so.
And is a known tech person, and he clearly would be hanging out in a lot of these horrible places on the internet. Yeah. And I could just imagine that they're just that nasty to be able to have some screenshots or something that implicates somebody, and they're using it. It's just, I know, I try not to make, and I know I've got to be careful about this. I might edit this out. This is, but I sit there and I go, this is where I have a normal brain and a reasonable brain, and my normal brain has been hijacked to the point where it's going into crazy town.
Yeah, well, they've been
Where I'm
quoted
thinking
so
about
many times.
plots because it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. And I mean, even, and then I've got to pick up
Yeah, you
somebody.
got to go.
And you've got to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But and this is not a big thing, but it will result in being suspended, is platform manipulation.
Yeah.
So they call it metric manipulation or inflation.
Yeah.
And it proved that JY, the majority of JY's followers are fake.
Yeah.
They're bots.
And mass reporting bots.
It's impossible that no one out of like 150,000 or whatever it is, followers would not come to their defense, would not comment. The people, there's now been some recent people who are gender critical of following, who are, but there is no one.
For their amusement.
This has been reported to Twitter. Yeah. So this is, I would assume, a bigger issue or a bigger offense than me saying about someone, this might be my favorite. Definitely not male dominance. No way. But no, me saying that is a permanent suspension. Having 150,000 fake followers is nothing. Insulting women about their vaginas doesn't matter. Anyway.
Yeah. But you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Hang in there. But it's been.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah. It's a bit of a debrief for you, I think.
Yes. Very cathartic. Yes, definitely.
That's good.
I have one friend here who is amazing. She's been because it's like a soap opera almost for her. She's appalled but very interested. So I'm able to talk to her, but everyone else is like, please.
Everyone is silent. Silence.
Yes, exactly.
It's crazy. So, everyone is quiet.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's great.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Okay. Well, you enjoy your day. I'm going
to too, or your night.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And is there anything that anyone can buy or do? You've got books.
Oh, well, hey, yes. Yeah. I have my 3 novels are now ebooks, but people can.
Great.
2 are for young adults. They're about a dystopia called Type and Type 2. It's a book about an adult.
Aren't we living in that?
I know. It's about, we'll have to wait and see. And then there's A Subtle Thing, which is for adults. It's about a young woman with depression.
Okay.
But the one that is in book form still, those used to be, but they got sold out, and then the publisher just made them ebooks. But the one that's a different publisher, that's still a book form, is a memoir of the year my son was diagnosed.
Okay.
With autism. So it's called When Autism Comes to Roost.
Okay. Interesting.
A family's journal from denial to acceptance. Yeah. So it starts out kind of not too happy, but it ends up in a better place. So.
We should do another autism call at some point and talk about that.
Yeah, that would be very good.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you go.
Okay.
And
great talking.
Thank
and
you
let me
so
know
much.
When it's
it'll be soon. It'll be soon. I want to get it up pretty quickly. So.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, take care.
Okay. Look after yourself.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.